Hey, what's up? Chad Hermansen here with Mental Edge Training Coach. Today I have a special guest, Steve Rodriguez, the head baseball coach at the University of Baylor. Steve and I go way back. He is a Vegas native. We played for the same high school coach. He's going to walk through and share his story about being an amazing high school player for an amazing team and coach, about coaching at Pepperdine, coaching at Baylor, his big league experience and what the minor leagues was like, and really what it's like to be a head coach and really all the hats that you got to wear being a head coach at a Division I high profile type school. So enjoy this episode with Steve Rodriguez. Hey, what's up, Steve? How's it going, man?
What's going on, Chad? How are you, man?
I'm doing good. I'm dying out here in Las Vegas. 112 today. I know you're in Texas. What's it out there today?
We got 105 with about 80% humidity. So I know Vegas is like the dry heat that everybody talks about. So 112 is like 75 for us.
All right. Yeah, you're dying. So we were just discussing a little bit. Have to admit, I'm a little disappointed. We have a clean face today.
Yeah.
You just shaved. So what's going on there?
First of all, it's really hot here right now, and then everywhere you go, you have to wear a mask, obviously, and I feel like I'm suffocating myself with all the facial hair and all the humidity. So, it was a good time to kind of clean the face up and give it a break from the facial hair aspect. But yeah, it was a good time to do it.
All right. Well, let's just slide on that.
Make
sure when the mask come off, the beard's got to come back.
Well, I was going to try to find a mask that actually had a beard on it, so that way no one would really know the difference.
There you go. Well, that's awesome. So I've been actually, once I started doing these calls, you were in my queue. I've had you. I got to get to Steve Rodriguez.
Yeah, I can see I was really further down in your queue than many. Okay, I see where I am, though.
Well,
I see.
I got to plan it accordingly, right? So I got to go player. I got to go coach, scout, a dad, so you got to, and then just the availability is always interesting too. So
okay, yeah, because I'm really busy right now.
So to kind of share with our audience, so we're both Vegas guys. We played for the same high school coach, Roger Fairless. You are much older than me. So you went to Valley High School. What year did you graduate Valley High School in Las Vegas?
I graduated Valley High School in 1989.
In 1989. So way back then, I heard they had some pretty good teams. So who were some of the guys you played with in high school?
Yeah, we were actually okay. I came in right after Greg Maddox. So when Greg Maddox, I want to say he was a senior when I was in 7th or 8th grade.
Okay.
And then Dan Opperman was a year ahead of me. And then we had Tyler Houston and Doug Mirabelli and Ricky Martinez. Trying to think of some of the other guys who were in the big leagues off of that team. But yeah, I want to say we had 4 or 5 guys that made it to the big leagues off that one team.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I remember as a kid. So I moved to Vegas, I guess when you graduated. So I was 89
Right.
when I moved from Salt Lake City, that area, to Vegas. And then the first time I heard of Roger Fairless was when I was in 8th grade. He came to Cannon Junior High School. And just this, 8th grade, you're looking up at this guy. You're like, he's got the handlebar mustache.
It's Wyatt Earp is what it is. It's
Wyatt Earp.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So just extremely intimidating. What was your experience like in high school playing for Coach Fairless?
Oh, I'll tell you what. First of all, I mean, my dad was in the military, so he was gone quite a bit, flying all over the place. He was an engineer and built runways all over the world. And so, the baseball field was kind of my home. That's where, I went right from school, I went to the baseball field. Even on the weekends, I was there pretty much all day as much as I could. And just absolutely loved it. I mean, he was a guy who, first of all, he wasn't really nice. You know what I mean? He was not the nicest of human beings at that time. But at the same time, he knew a lot of things just because being a man, being older, being a coach, he knew a lot of things that a lot of us never wanted to admit to ourselves. He knew that, one, life is going to be difficult. He knows baseball is not an easy sport, one, to be successful in, but two, to do well on a consistent basis. And he knew that there was going to be some adversities with everything we did. And so what I think he did is he taught us how to manage fear. And he also taught us how to manage anger. And what I mean by that is, I mean, he was a disciplinarian. He was militant. I mean, there was a lot of things that he did that people today would absolutely just completely frown on. But at the same time, he put you in situations where he created some emotions inside you that forced you to learn how to deal with it. Now, some kids absolutely hated it. Okay. Yeah. But the majority of us knew exactly what he was doing. It's because we realized we were getting better, you know, and he would teach us things based out of, if you don't learn this, you're going to be in trouble type of thing. And so it forced us to really get better and learn things. And what I liked about it is when we got to a game, it was like, whew, finally we can relax now. And we were able to play. And, you know, you don't realize, I mean, we would win like 15-2 and he'd still be upset because we did something wrong.
You gave up 2 runs. What are you doing?
Exactly. You're like, what are you doing? These 2 runs. And, you know, and you just realize that it was about perfecting the game. As hard as that and almost impossible as that is, it was about perfecting the game. And that's where I realized, just going from being a player to a coach, you realize that there's so many things during that game that can really set a tempo for the future. And if you don't get those right, then it can really kind of snowball on you, and it can lead to other bad effects that can really affect the game's results. And so, but I think he forced guys to really deal with those emotions, because those are emotions you're going to feel in a game. If you don't have success, you're going to have anger. And then there's going to be some times where you might be a little scared, especially at that age. And he forced you to deal with it. He would almost rather have you be scared of him and angry at him than the game. But I'll be honest, when I got to the big leagues with Boston, I had to pull back some of those things to remember that, because I'll be honest, my first couple games as a starter, coming in, it was like, hey, I'm in the big leagues. I'm playing in the big leagues. And I was just sheer joy of being able to say I was there and doing that. But I forgot that I actually still had to play too. And, you know, I kind of was like, oh, I'm in the big leagues now. Well, I don't have to have those emotions when it was wrong. Like, that's how I grew up, and that's what I had learned how to do. And so I had to tell myself, like, hey, I need to bring those emotions back. So I would actually tell myself, okay, I need to find something to be angry about, someone to be mad at, or whatever it is, to create that energy inside me that would, I call it ISO focus, where it would take all the big surrounding and it would just focus on what I was actually supposed to do. And those are the things that really helped me throughout my career.
That's awesome. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think what he did was your Valley teams, and then after my school, Green Valley, he was the head coach that opened around 91. That was my freshman year. So when I went from 8th grade to 9th grade, he's the guy. We didn't win the state championship in the first year. We didn't have seniors that year either. But starting in 92, that was our first year. We won 6 straight state championships. So, and I know you guys did really well at Valley as well. So what he was doing, I think, is he was preparing us for the big stage. Mm-hmm. Right? He was preparing us, and we knew when we'd go practice, it was extremely hard. Right? People hated it. Kids were puking, you know, because you're kind of a baseball / track team.
Yes.
Right? So was that your same experience at Valley?
Oh, I have some unbelievable stories, and some that I can actually share, some that are probably not really appropriate. But some that just, you know, I remember diving for a ball, and I remember it took a weird hop and it hit me on the side of the head and it like knocked me out cold. I was like, out. And I just remember like laying there and like he just left me there, and I woke up. I was like, wait, practice is still going on, you know? And it was like, you could almost hear him like, someone drag him off the field or something like that. And I was just like, oh my gosh. You know, but I just realized, like, you know, there's not going to be a lot of sympathy. Like, things like that are going to happen. And it's weird to say that now, just because, you know, obviously as a parent and as a coach in today's society, you're like, what in the world was that all about? But back then, everybody's like, yeah, that's just kind of how it is, you know. And then we did this thing that I still do today with some of my guys. It's very modified though. Yeah. But for double plays, I had a thing called a rag mitt, and it's a glove that doesn't have a web. Okay. Mm-hmm. Fingers and the thumb, there's no web. And I turned double plays with that. I took ground balls with it. I caught fly balls with it. Like, that was like my practice glove. I didn't have a web. And so I would use that all the time. And what I realized is it helped me turn double plays to be really good at being able to make that pivot, better than a lot of people, even throughout the minor leagues and stuff like that. Everybody's like, how'd your hands get so good?
Yeah.
And I realized that was the reason. And so I carried around a rag mitt with me all the time, even if I was just turning double plays just to help me. And, and everybody's like, well, what happens if a ball goes through and it hits you in the face? And you go, well, there's no webbing there, so you better make sure it doesn't do that. And so I would actually do that with some of our guys. I'd bring out some rag mitts, and they'd kind of look at me like, wait, what are you doing?
What's
And
that?
I said, yeah, don't let the ball go through the webbing. And they're like, yeah, but what if? I go, no. There's no what if, But now here's the thing. Now we use like the Incrediballs and stuff like that just to kind of get them used to it. And it's just more the action and the feel of being able to get your hands in the right spot and keeping your hands together and making them work together. But I realized like there's a lot of things that, we did that, like I said, would be totally frowned upon now. But back then it just made you tougher and realize, hey, I got to get really good at this. And if I don't, then I'm not going to be very good and I might get injured along the way. But what I realized that he just made us so tough, and he pulled something out of each and every one of us that to be honest, there's no comfort zone whatsoever once you step in that field. And it was like, hey, you can leave your comfort right at the door because you're about to get as uncomfortable as it can possibly be.
I agree. I share the same sentiment. When I went my junior year, I went to the infield from the outfield. We lost our shortstop, and in the fall, he's like, Hermansen, what? You're gonna be my shortstop. I'm like, okay. Okay, I need to go get a glove, go buy a glove. Right. So I learned to do that. They cut not my new glove, but they gave me that glove, and I was the same way. I'm like, seriously? Like, I gotta. So then you kind of start to figure it out. I remember one day he was hitting me ground balls, and I took a bad hop right in the mouth. These two bottom middle teeth straight back, chip one of my front teeth, and I'm bleeding everywhere. Right, and we still have like an hour of practice left. And I know, and after we took ground balls, it was my turn to hit, like our group. And I'm like, well, I want to hit, right? So, but I came around to the cage, and he's kind of looking at me with this like grin on his face, like, I'm so proud of you right now, for just not going home, basically. Right. Like, you could just tell, like, that's what toughness is, and if you're bleeding everywhere, so what, get your swings in, then you go home.
No, I had my appendix ruptured. We were playing El Dorado High School at El Dorado, and I had my appendix rupture right there at the field. And I remember going like, God, my stomach is killing me. And he's like, what'd you have, a bad hamburger or something at lunch? And I'm like, no. He's like, this isn't a hamburger, trust me.
Yeah.
Ended up having to go to the hospital that night, ended up, having surgery. But 8 days later, I had staples. I had 8 staples in my side, and I was playing last couple of games. And we went into the district and then the city and then the state championship and ended up winning. But I had put a big pad right there. I was diving, and he was like, I don't want to hear any excuses. I don't want to, And I was like, I'm not giving you any excuses. I'm just letting you know I got staples in my gut right now. But we ended up winning that thing. Yeah.
Yeah, he would just be like, hey, if it splits open, then just go get it fixed after the game. Right.
Right. Exactly.
Well, that's awesome. So we could probably go on for days with stories with him, but so you graduated from Valley, and then you go on to Pepperdine University, right? And I would love for you to share the story, because you have I would say an infamous story of the World Series event when you were at Pepperdine in the World Series. Tell us about that.
No, it was pretty amazing time, because we go there and we don't have social media, and we didn't have the TV coverage, and we didn't have a lot of things that we do now to find out what everybody else is doing around college baseball. And so, we were reading like Collegiate Baseball, which always came out like a month, afterwards, or Baseball America. So you were getting like last month's information.
Yeah.
And so we just didn't have the up-to-date stuff. And, we really didn't know a ton about other teams other than, reading the rankings or Baseball America Top 25 or something like that. And so we really didn't know a lot. But going into Omaha, the draft was coming up and all that stuff. And nobody really kind of knew what was going on, because the scouts would call you they had to find out what hotel you were at and stuff like that. And well, I never got a call. I never got a call that day.
This is your junior year, right?
Junior year, and the draft is happening that day, and I don't get a call. I'm hearing Derek Wallace, you went in the first round. Dan Melendez, you went in the second round. I think Steve Montgomery went in the third round. Chris Sheff went in the seventh. I mean, it was just going on. I mean, we had like 9 guys drafted, and I never got a phone call. And I was like, oh, that's odd. I had talked to all these scouts and all that, and we're stretching right before a Texas game. And I remember I was like, God, that's weird. Everybody, and they're like, you didn't get a call? I was like, no, never got a call. I was sitting in my room all morning, never got a call.
Are you pissed off right now?
I was confused.
Okay.
I was just baffled just because everybody said they got these phone calls. And I was like, well, maybe, I'm like, hey, whatever, I'll figure it out later. And then my Andy Lopez, my coach, came up and he goes, yeah, I heard 5th round by the Red Sox. And I was like, wow, I have no idea. And then later on, when I actually ended up talking to the scout that drafted me, Gene Stevenson, he goes, oh, I didn't want to bug you. And I was like, not
you're playing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it ends up that night, I ended up hitting a grand slam I'm pretty sure it was that night. I ended up hitting a grand slam against Texas, against Brooks Kieschnick to end up winning the game, and that put us in the championship game. And then I make a dive and play at second base in the championship game with the tying run at third base with 2 outs to hopefully kind of, it was like 7th or 8th inning, kind of solidify the game for us.
Yeah, I still remember that. I was a kid watching that game, and that was it, right? When the World Series is on, you watched every game if you loved it and you were into it, and that was awesome. Because '95, that was also my senior year. But so you were drafted in '95, correct?
92.
Was it '92? Okay, '92. Then you got to the big leagues in '95.
Correct. Yeah.
That is okay. So tell us about your minor league experience and your call up to the big leagues.
Well, I'll tell you what, just after the College World Series, went with Team USA, and I was the last guy cut on the Olympic team in 1992. So it's like, okay, great. And then I get home, and literally I hit the ground, and I fly to, I end up signing my contract, and then I fly to Winter Haven, Florida to go play a little bit. And I end up like pulling both hamstrings in consecutive weeks. And so I was kind of out a little bit. I had a horrible first year. I think I hit like 179. It was brutal. Trying to get used to, minor league baseball and the heat, in Florida. And then, I think Hurricane Andrew at one point came through and like canceled a bunch of games that we were playing in and just a lot of different things. And then throughout the minor league, I went to Lynchburg, Virginia, for my first full year, ended up with like 500 plus at bats. And,
wow.
Just the Carolina League, I'll tell you what, once the storm hits, it is something.
It's rough.
They didn't have all these amazing stadiums that they have now. It's like Kinston, North Carolina, and Winston-Salem, and all these places that, you have like cinder block walls and all these things in the outfield. And, you're eating lunch at a Chevron and just different things that you just like, you would possibly not even imagine would be a professional athlete. That's why I always laugh. Like, I want to play pro ball. I'm like, you want to play in the big leagues. That's what you want. You want to play pro ball.
Yeah.
Big league. There's a big difference. But you know what? The minor leagues, I'll be honest with you, I think I got to the big leagues too quick. I was in the minor leagues. I had a full season in A-ball and the Carolina League. Next year I was in AA for like 2 months, and then I went to AAA to finish out the year. I ended up hitting 300, and then that next year I'm in the big leagues. And so I tell people I made it too quick. I'm not complaining, don't get me wrong. But I just kind of played hard, but I really didn't know a lot of the nuances that a lot of those big leaguers did and how they would set pitchers up and do different things. And I was just trying to learn as much as I could in such a rapid amount of time. But I was a middle infielder, so I could play a lot of different positions, and I did a bunch of things for them. And so luckily I was kind of going up and down a little bit with them. But the minor leagues, I'll tell you what, it was a great learning experience because you realized why when you got to the big leagues you wanted to stay there, because the minor league was so miserable.
Yeah.
And everybody, but in AAA you get to fly. I was like, yeah, every flight's at 6 a.m. So you're waking up at 4. You had a late night. You're trying to find a way to get some sleep. And this is back when I had contacts. So I'm like, man, thin glasses. Those were like real world issues that I was having to deal with at the time.
Same thing, yeah.
And then I fall asleep with my contacts in. Is it in the back of my eyeball? Where is it? I have no idea. And then I'm trying to figure it out, or do I put a new one in, and then I got to play that night, it is just miserable. But I mean, it was a good experience because it forced you, like I said earlier, it teaches you how to deal with anger and fear in a lot of different ways, because that frustration comes in. And there's so many things that are outside your control. You would see guys get called up and you're like, how come that guy's getting called up and I'm not getting called up? Am I happy for him? Absolutely. But I'd be really happy for me too if I got called up, because this is my journey as well. And but I think the minor leagues is just a great way to prepare you for life, because nothing's inside your control. You're dealing with a lot of things that you would look at and go, man, I wouldn't play today, but you're playing, and they're going to find a way to make you play, just because of weather or whatever it is. And you start to realize that there are some things that you kind of took for granted, and the stuff that you kind of have to manage in your life along with your career during that time is it's definitely different. When you're getting paid for 6 months out of a year, and then you have to figure out something for the next 6 months, it's just a lot. It's really different.
No doubt. And so you get called up with the Red Sox, right? That's the team that drafts you. You go through a couple of years in the minor leagues. You mentioned you felt like you were there a little bit too early. What age were you when you got your call up?
24.
24. Okay.
Yeah, that was young back then. Now guys are like 18 in the big leagues. But I was 24, I believe. But yeah, so I was kind of up and down with them. Then they ended up taking me off the roster right around playoff time. And I got picked up on waivers by the Tigers. Because then I spent the rest of the year in the big leagues in September for a September call up with the Tigers.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so that was 95.
Correct. That
was the year I graduated high school, and remember seeing you at a few games, watching TV and stuff. So I'm like, that's a Vegas dude. I love it. So now you had your big league experience, going up and down. What was it like for you from a mental standpoint when you get sent back from the big leagues back down to AAA? What's that like for you?
It's frustrating. It's absolutely frustrating, because you know what it's like, and in your head, I'm like, gosh, if I would have done this, I would have, you start categorizing things that you need to get better at right away. You start going from diet to lifting. I mean, any number of things you start going, you start watching what guys are doing and how they're doing it. And then you start to kind of like, okay, I need to make sure I'm doing this better and doing this better. But it is frustrating. It absolutely is, because when you get a taste of it, you realize, okay, that's attainable. Now I need to keep doing that. And, but unfortunately, sometimes it's outside your control.
Yeah, no doubt. It's certainly one of the most frustrating things. It's all the emotions, right? You talked about emotions earlier. You're embarrassed. You're frustrated. You're like, maybe for a second, a woe is me. For just, then you get rid of that pretty quick, and then you realize, okay, I got to get back on track here and get back to work and go back down to AAA and, extra work, whatever it is. And maybe you start to relax a little bit.
And what people don't realize is there's a lot of questions that always start popping up from other people. Luckily when I was there was no cell phones. We had beepers, we had like pagers or whatever it was. But now it's like, hey, what happened? What's going on? Why did they send you? There were so many questions like after the season. Hey, what happened here? Why'd you you just like, man, just leave me alone. Like, I'm still trying to like digest the whole thing myself.
Yeah. So, well, cool. That's awesome. So then it's interesting now, you've been coaching for so long. I mean, you've probably been coaching longer than you've been playing. Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah. I'm 20 years in now. Yes.
Yeah. That's why I was looking at your background and all that stuff with your coaching. So at what point did you say, I want to be a coach?
This is actually a hilarious story, Chad. So when I was with the Expos, I'd gotten released from the Tigers. Expos called and said, hey, we'd like to sign you. I'm like, sure, absolutely. So I go down to St. Petersburg. We're sharing a venue with the Cardinals at the time. Mm-hmm. So I go down there, and we're toward the end of spring training, and one of the minor league guys goes, hey, did you ever think about coaching? And in my head, I was like, what are you telling me? Am I done playing now? And so just because, I was like throwing BP or something like that and hitting ground like fungos.
You got some good BP, man. You ever thought about coaching?
exactly. Hey, I was like, well, I'd like to continue playing in this career. I'll worry about that when I'm done. And what's funny is I told my wife that, and she's like, are they going to release you? I'm like, I don't know. They want to hire me as a coach. I mean, who knows? But I said, I'd really like to try to finish my playing career if I could. But yeah,
How old are you at this point?
28-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's about right. 28.
Creeping up on 30, somewhere around there, right?
In my head, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm one of the older guys on the field. Everybody's asking me questions. They want me to go talk to the minor league guy, the coordinators and stuff like that, and figure stuff out. So I realized that, that's kind of my job now, is I'm that guy.
Yeah. So then it's a weird conversation, right? I never had that conversation, but I know talking to other guys that their mindset is still like, dude, I'm a player.
Right.
And then the perspective isn't quite there yet, because you don't know what's happening from the front office perspective. The coaches are like, hey, we don't really have a spot for this guy, but man, he would be a great coach, right? And when they ask you about that at 27, 28, 29, 30, if you're still in player mode, it's kind of like, I'm not interested in that. I'm going to get to the big leagues. I'm going to get back to the big leagues.
No, absolutely. But that was the thing, is like my last year, I had my daughter. So she just turned 1 my last year of playing in August. So it was like the end of the season. My wife and I, we were in Ottawa, Canada, like right after she was born, or she was like 6 months old around that time. And going to Ottawa, Canada, and then having to go to Albuquerque because I got traded. I was a player to be named later in a trade. So going from Ottawa, Canada, Albuquerque, my wife was really pumped about that. Because for me, I'm like, hey, I'm jumping on a plane. I got to, head to Albuquerque. And she's like, yeah, I'll pack the car up and I'll go ahead and drive back. Don't worry about it. And so those things. And then I realized, during that time when my daughter was born, and during that first part of the year when she was kind of getting toward the age of 1, I was like, I called myself a 2-week daddy. I'd be there for like a week, gone for a week, here for 7 days, gone for 7, or 3 days, 10 days, whatever it was. And then, and I told my wife, I kind of got sick of hearing, hey, guess what she did today? Guess what she did this day? And I was like, I didn't like hearing that. And so, at the end of my career, my daughter turned 1 when I was in Albuquerque. I think I was in Tucson playing at the time on her birthday. And, in that off season, I had some offers, because I was a free agent at the time, and I had some offers to play in the minor league, some other places, and the Phillies and stuff like that. And I was like, you know what? I'm good. I don't need to be bounced around, and I want to know my kid. I want to know my wife. And so at that point, my wife and I just kind of decided that, it's time to take the career to a different location and do something different. But I was volunteering at Riverside Community College at the time. I used to go there and work out when I was preparing for spring training.
Yeah.
And so I told Dennis Rogers, who was the coach there at the time, I said, hey, look, I'm kind of done playing. Would you mind if I came out and just kind of messed around and helped your infielders, your hitters, or whatever it was? He was like, oh my gosh, would love to have you out here. I go, yeah, just volunteer. I don't need to get paid or anything. I just want to come out and do it. And then the Pepperdine job opened up that year I was with Dennis. And he said, hey, I don't know if you know this, but that Pepperdine assistant coach job opened up. You may want to put your resume in.
Mm-hmm.
So put the resume in, and next thing you know, I was hired.
And then you spent over 10 to 15 years at Pepperdine. Is that right?
I was an assistant for 4, and then I was a head coach for 12. Yeah. So 16 years at Pepperdine.
So I have actually never been to I've driven past it. I've heard about the field. I've seen pictures. What is that like, just working there for as long as you did?
It doesn't suck, I can tell you that. You're sitting there and you're overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Your weather gauge is anywhere from 55 to 75 every single day. Some days it's a little more overcast, or they call it a marine layer in Malibu. But for the most part, it was an amazing experience. that's where I met my wife. So, going back there and being able to coach there, very familiar setting. I just really enjoyed it. Really did.
That's awesome. So you coached there for as long as you did, and then now you are the head coach at Baylor. What was the transition like from, you could probably say Baylor's a bigger school,
mm-hmm. Yes.
Right, in regards to that. So how did that all come about with going to Baylor?
Malibu to Waco. what's funny is when people heard rumors that was happening, there were some tweets going out about, yeah, his wife will roll over and kill him in his sleep if he makes that move. You know what? It was a really hard, it was easy and hard at the same time. It was hard because Pepperdine's home for my wife and I, and we have a lot of family that's in California. We're very familiar with the surroundings, the setting. We loved it there. But at the same time, we had an opportunity to come to a bigger campus. The facilities are much different. Lifestyle is a lot different. Cost of living is a lot different. And so when Baylor called us up, I mean, it was kind of weird because my wife and I were at Nordstrom, believe it or not, just kind of walking around, and I got a call from an 817 number, which is a Dallas number. And I was like, who in the world's calling me from Dallas? And my wife's like, go ahead and take it. I'm just going to go try these on real quick or whatever. And I end up, it's a search firm that is looking for the baseball coach for Baylor. And they're like, hey, I'm sure you're aware. And I said, yeah, I know that the job's opened up, and, would you be interested? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I'd love to talk to you, because my daughter, I'm going to rewind a little bit. About 8 months earlier, I took my daughter to Baylor to look at the school because she's a senior in high school. And so we had actually came out and went to a football game. Judge Starr was the president at the time. We knew him from when he was at Pepperdine. He was the dean of the law school there. So we already knew a lot of people who were at Baylor that we kind of had a relationship with. And so we showed up, and my daughter loved it. I thought it was an amazing campus, and the people, they really made us feel unbelievable, to be honest. And I remember my wife goes like, what'd you think? And I was like, I actually really enjoy this place. Next thing you know, June comes and I get a phone call, and I'll be honest, it happened pretty quick. I got a phone call Sunday night. They flew us out Tuesday. We were there Wednesday on an interview. They made me the offer Thursday, and Friday I accepted. So it was a pretty quick transition.
That's awesome. So I'm curious, and I'm sure listeners are, being a head coach, you go into an interview, and who is interviewing you, and what kind of questions are they asking you?
Oh, wow. You know what? The athletic director, the deputy athletic director, our compliance officer, those were the three that were in the room. And then I talked to a couple different people throughout the day, just in regards to different things, facilities people and stuff like that. But the biggest questions were, what's your philosophy? What do you do for each and every kid? And I just, to be honest, what's great is I knew I was very comfortable at Pepperdine.
Right.
And this wasn't something that I had to have, or I was not, oh my gosh, I'm never going to work again type of thing. But I was very comfortable, very happy at Pepperdine. And when Baylor called, I went there, and what's great is I was completely relaxed and I was myself. Right. And that, I think, was the biggest thing for me, is that I had more questions for them than they actually had for me. Just in regards to like, what do they want out of their new coach and stuff like that. But, the biggest thing is like, what's your philosophy? How do you run your program? Explain certain things that you do. Why do you do certain things? What has allowed you to have success in the past at a school that obviously doesn't have the facilities that they did at Baylor. And so it was, to be honest, those were questions that were easy for me to answer, just because I was living through them. And, like I always tell people, you never have to remember what you said when you're telling the truth. So it was just really easy for me to go ahead and be honest with them with where I was.
Yeah, no doubt. That's awesome. Yeah, but I never know when, like, how intense are they when they're going in? Are they just getting and reaming you? Are they, what do you do when someone does this? And so it's interesting how those type of questions can work out sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure there's some interviews that are unbelievably intense, but
yeah.
I think kind of how you go in, or in regards to how I went in, there was not a lot of stress, and I like to be able to look at the room and understand, who are the people in the room. You do some research on them, you find out some information about them, you ask questions, and then you try to find a way to merge the two as best you can to kind of ease the tension in the room.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm curious as to, how do you go about I know Division I programs now, they have maybe sports psychologists or even mental skills coaches.
Yeah.
How do you guys go about at Baylor helping, whether it's you or somebody you bring in, just discussing the mental game and working with your players?
There's a lot of different ways that people go about this. You can go and bring in all sorts of like different people to kind of come in and talk to your guys. There's all these cliches and stuff like that people can use. For me, I love bringing in people that are tangible. I like people to come in and give them things that they can utilize. And what I don't want to do is I don't want to bring in a lot of people.
Yeah.
I want their brain going from one thing to another thing. And they're so worried about all these other things that they really forget what they're supposed to do. And so I just I brought in a gentleman who was like the head of Delta Force for 25 years. I brought in a Christian neuroscientist that kind of talked about how do you get negative thoughts out of your head. And she showed science and video of what a bad thought looks like and how it can change in your brain. It shows molecules of what it looks like when your thought can actually change a negative thought to a positive thought, like what happens, things like that. And just the ability to do those things, because I tell them, I go, look, I'm going to be hard on you. And sometimes you're going to need somebody to talk to because of me.
Yeah.
But we have so many different, like psychologists here and mental health specialists that, they have access to so many different things that is going to help them, whether it's their family, whether it's their girlfriend or whatever it is. But for me, and I will be honest, this is the easiest thing for me to do. I personally just feel like the best mental health I can give them is to know those kids better than anybody else. When we're taking BP and I'll walk around the outfield and I want to talk to as many guys as I can. Hey, how are you doing? What's going on? And then just start a conversation and kind of see where they take it. Because I want to know how they're doing. And I tell them right away, I go, hey, if I ask you, how are you doing? And you say, okay, I'm going to assume it's okay. I'm going to assume everything's okay. But if you got some stuff going on, I go, hey, how you doing? And you say, well, I'm kind of struggling with this, then let's go. Let's talk about it.
Right.
And they know they can. I mean, I've had kids come in and talk to me about girlfriend issues, parents getting divorced, dads getting brain surgery. I mean, you name it, kids just breaking down in my office just because they really don't know who to talk to about it. But I don't think that happens if I don't have that relationship with them. And that goes from like, hey, when you're on the road and you're eating, go up and start talking to them and see what's going on. And, doing room checks at night, what are they eating? What are they doing? What are they reading? You see them eating gummy bears and, Goya mango drinks or whatever it is. And, playing, PS4 or whatever, with their other teammates in other rooms and stuff, just different. It's just great to be able to create that relationship, because that's how the interaction is going to work. If I'm boss and they're employee, they're never going to open up to me. They know ultimately that I have a little more say in things, but at the same time, man, when you're in the trenches, you need to know that your boss is in that trench with you. And that if there's something wrong, that you can talk to them about it. Because there's some things I know that kids aren't comfortable talking to anybody else about it, just because they're not sure how it's going to be perceived. Where for me, they know how it's going to be perceived. I tell them all the time, I go, look, as soon as you step into my office about a personal matter, my coach hat is taken off. And now I'm just a person who's trying to give you the best advice and the best guidance I can possibly give you, just with my sheer ability to have wisdom in regards to my length of life. I'm almost 50 right now. Some of my experiences, some of my, I've been married for 25 years. So some of my marital things that, they're having relationship issues. I mean, all sorts of different things. You want to talk about mental health, just having a kid relax. They're stressed out over so many different things that, hey, you know what? You can relax a little bit. Don't worry about your social media. Don't worry about what someone's posting or whatever it is. You're going to be fine. We're going to be okay. And just them knowing that I got their back sometimes is probably one of the most comforting things I think they can have.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's awesome. I know being a player, being able to go into an office and knowing that, hey, I got some stuff going on and I trust this person. We can keep it between ourselves and I'm going to get some good advice. Obviously that's you could probably say that's a part of the hidden job description of a head coach, right? That everyone seems to kind of go through. And I don't know about you, but I felt like pro ball was a little bit different that way. Some of your managers would want to get to know you better than others. Some just were there. It was just a complete job, in and out of the office type thing. They didn't really care. So it's interesting how that works. And I know as a parent, probably when they're talking to you about recruiting, is that probably something that's brought up with how you treat your players?
I think a lot of coaches might say it, but few probably do it.
Mm-hmm.
I hope more do it. I really do. I don't know how everybody runs their programs. But the truth is, I try to let them know. I go, look, if you bring your son in here and he's the same kid when he leaves as when we brought him in, then I haven't really done a good job. I have not done my job. I go, baseball wise, I'm not concerned about the baseball aspect, but when your son steps away from this university, he's got to be a man, because he's going to have to hit the ground running with a job, with a relationship, and he's going to need to know how to provide. And he's going to need to know that he can overcome adversity, and he's going to be just fine by doing it.
Yeah.
But I try to explain a lot of different things to people, because they're like, well, what about baseball? I go, we have every bit of technology that you can possibly imagine. And trust me, your swing and all that stuff, we are going to make that right. That's not a problem. I go, but that doesn't go well if you can't get what's going on up here right. And I always tell people, when you have issues off the field, almost 90% of the time it affects what's happening on the field.
Mm-hmm.
And so once things are real, like when guys have really good relationships with their girlfriends, their family unit is doing really well, man, everything seems to sync up really well on the field. But when there's chaos going on the field, off the field, you can almost bet that there's a little bit of chaos going on the field as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I call that interference, right?
Yes.
There's something going on. Yeah, there's something going on that you could tell some days, especially like you're saying, if you really know those players, they come in and maybe their body language is already showing it when they come in that locker room, or right when you get out on, and you can just kind of see their actions, like something's off with him today,
Yes, absolutely. You see when they're coming out of the cage, if they're frustrated and they're slamming their bat down, if they got their head down, if they're looking off in a distant, and you're like, what are you looking at? You can tell that their mind's processing something that has nothing to do with what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say in regards to a high school kid that is looking to come to Baylor? What are you looking for in a high school athlete?
I mean, let's be honest. The first thing that always pops into our head is, can you play? When a kid step in my office, I always ask them one pretty simple thing: what do you do better than anybody else in this country? And I want them to have an answer for that. It doesn't, whether it's work ethic, hey, I can really run the bases, I can read ball and dirt, I can handle a bat better, I can really locate my fastball, whatever it is. I want them to have some kind of confidence in something that they can step into my office and know right away that they can say that.
Mm-hmm.
But, obviously, I'm looking for character. I want a kid who can be coached. The problem is kids have a lot of different coaches right now. I got my scout ball coach, my high school coach, my hitting coach, my pitching coach, my strength coach. I mean, all these different coaches who are feeding into them. But at the same time, I tell them, I'm the one who makes the lineup. I'm the one who makes the lineup. So at some point, you're really going to have to listen to me. But I'll be honest, we have not really had many of those issues. We have kids who want to come in and learn and grow and be better. And they're constantly texting, hey, take a look at this swing. What'd you see here? And I'll be looking at their videos from that day on my phone, because we have the ability to do that from their swings. And I'll look at it and I'll send them stuff. Hey, check this out. Look at this. Compare this video to this guy in the big leagues. Look what he's doing to what you're doing. And it's nonstop, and I absolutely love it. But kids who want to learn, man, I can coach them all day long. I really can, because I love it when, I don't want them to be fake about it. Like, hey, what about this? What about that? But I want them to be genuine with like, hey, I'm trying to figure this out. I can't get it. What do you see? And, I tell them, I go, well, I can see one thing, but what I see sometimes doesn't really correlate with what you feel. So my question is, what do you feel?
Right.
Like, I feel like I'm doing this. And I go, well, I'm not seeing that. So let's try to find a way to kind of meet somewhere in the middle and work it out. Because I tell them sometimes the best coach is just you.
Yes.
My best coaching on batting practice and not saying a word. And they kind of look at me and I go, yeah, Like, when you take a good swing, when you hit a ball hard. You don't need to go, oh my gosh, what an amazing swing. No, when you do it right. And so I just go, okay, repeat that. And I'll just keep going. If you make a mistake, don't do that again. Just keep going. Just keep swinging, because you never know when that one swing where you go, oh my gosh, that was it. And then you just repeat it over and over again. But I tell them, I go, you're never going to know if you don't do it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. Now, you've been coaching long enough in college baseball. Maybe you've seen some trends over the years. What are you seeing now with college hitters?
Not so much college hitters as opposed to high school hitters. The emphasis, it's slowly starting to tear away from it, which I'm really happy about. But launch angle has become like this thing when we started recruiting, where there's kids that are 5'2", weigh 120 pounds, and they're trying to get launch angle to a ball, and the ball's barely getting over the infield dirt. And I'm just like, man, you're going to be making a lot of right-handed turns leaving, going back to the dugout. I said, let's focus, and so we talked to our guys about it. Some guys have that strength to be able to do it, but we really use technology to help us out with a lot of that. So now I'm not necessarily the bad guy. We get a lot of information and we decipher it down, and we give our guys very specific numbers that we want them to hit in regards to launch angle, attack angle, plane efficiency, and stuff like that. And we let the technology and the numbers do the talking for us. Mm-hmm. So we're not always the bad guy. If there's nothing worse, like, that's not it. No, my gosh, change this, change that. Because back when we played, we didn't have it. You would take a swing and you're like, that ain't it. And you take another swing. Well, now there's some technology that will tell you, oh yeah, I did feel that. And it's instant feedback. Mm-hmm. So now you just need someone throwing, and it can literally tell you what you're doing. And our job is to just make sure that their swing is efficient and as precise as possible. Now, the only thing they have to do is see a good pitch and lay that swing on it. Mm-hmm. Pitch recognition, pitch velocity recognition, and then lay a good swing on a strike. I tell them all the time, I go, you don't swing at a strike, I don't care how good your swing is. It's not going to do us any good.
Right.
You swing at strikes with this swing, you're going to do damage. It's just the way it is.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's always interesting. Every coach has a little different experience. What I'm seeing is technology is definitely being used, more, and that makes sense because it seems like kids now, they want that information. Where you and we just went out there, you took 3 bad swings, you're like, well, okay, we'll fix it, right. And I think today's hitters are certainly capable of doing that. But now they're being trained with all these different gadgets and gizmos, if you will, but some of it's pretty cool, and they like that feedback. So I think as a coach, you probably feel like you got to feed into it as well.
Oh, absolutely. The hardest thing for me is I'm old now. You know what I mean? I'm almost 50 years old. And so when technology starts recycling and coming back and there's new things, like, I have to learn the new technology. And for me, it was just not learn. And so in regards to the different types of technology and stuff like that. So now you're really having to submerge yourself into numbers, into things. And, you look at a TrackMan data sheet, it's like 100 columns long. And so now our job as coaches is to go, okay, we're not going to pay attention to those 98 columns. We're going to focus on these 2. They're like, well, what about, I go, no. Don't worry about them. We're going to focus on these 2 because you have no control over these. You have control over these. And so that's what I think as coaches, our job is that we're a filter. We're taking all this information, we're putting it in a coffee filter, and we're trying to get out the strongest coffee possible. And, as it's a drip technique, we just want the very smallest amount of information for them to have to worry about. I'm not worrying about a lot of things, but you can worry about this because your swing is affected by this statistic. His swing is affected by this statistic. So he's going to work on plane efficiency. You're working on attack angle. I go, there's 2 totally different swings, 2 totally different stats.
Absolutely. That's great. Well, you've certainly been generous with your time, Steve. One last question for you is, an aspiring college player, maybe a minor league player, they're kind of seeing the rope, the end of the rope.
They're asking if you want to coach or not.
Yes, meaning like at what point, do you just say, man, I think I would really enjoy being a coach? What advice do you have for them?
The best thing I have is do you enjoy the game still? If you don't enjoy the game, it's going to be really tough. Do you enjoy understanding relationships? Because if you're a bad relationship person, it's going to be really hard, because kids, they want to talk. They want to talk a lot. And so you have to be able to understand that. The coaching, believe it or not, the coaching on the field is probably the easiest thing that you have to deal with. But kids have a lot more anxiety now. They have a lot more worries. They have a lot more, like you call it, interference. I call it static. Things that are touching them in regards to their life, in regards to their emotional state of mind and stuff like that, that you're just like, holy smokes, I didn't realize all this was going on. And I'll be honest, like, just go and do it. Find it. Like in my head, I'm like, I was volunteering, and I go, man, I love this. I love watching guys get it. You start working with them, you go, oh, I got it now. I loved it. And so I was like, man, I could do this all the time. And that's why some of the best days for me are just me one-on-one with one of the guys in the cage, just throwing batting practice, and until we're both just sweating, just going, hey, let's figure this thing out and let's get it right. I love those days.
Yeah.
That for me is the biggest thing, is go and do it. Like, go to a high school, go, hey, you know what? Let me volunteer. Let me come out here and let me try to work with some of your guys. And I just think that's one of the most valuable things you can do is go and do it, because you're not going to know if you like it. If you start telling guys things, you start hearing some of the things they say back to you, does it offend you? Does it not? Because seriously, some guys get really offended by like the littlest of things. I tell them, like, I don't get offended by anything.
Right.
But I just kind of gotten accustomed to kids saying kind of goofy things because they don't know what to say. But I think that the biggest thing is just to go and do it. See if you like it, because some guys love it. Some guys, oh my gosh, I can't do it. But the biggest thing is you have to be able to communicate. You got to be able to communicate in a lot of different ways. In fact, I got my master's on coaching styles and learning styles.
Okay.
And the best thing that I can tell people is that I can change how I coach. I can change how I coach, whether it's verbally. I can show pictures. I can show video. I can have somebody else word something differently than I'm saying it. Because sometimes I can say, play underneath the baseball, and everybody's like, what does that mean? And you might say, hey, you know what? Just make sure your glove hand is underneath the baseball a little bit. Oh, okay. It's the same thing, just worded.
Right.
See, that's a coaching style. Well, I can change how I coach in a lot of different ways. I can't change how you learn. Right. So my job is to figure out how you learn. Like if you're an audible, if you're a visual, if you're a tactile, I mean, most athletes, to be honest, are doers. They have to be able to do it.
Right.
And that's the thing is like, that's why, but some kids aren't, some kids are different. So I have to find a way to reach out and be able to figure out what's going to make him tick. Because there's nothing more frustrating for both parties than if my athlete can't get it and I'm frustrated that he can't get it. Well, now we're both upset. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm telling you what to do. Well, I can't get it. Well, we're both upset. So if he's frustrated, I can change how I'm coaching it. I just have to be willing to do that. Some coaches are like, well, this is how I teach. Well, you're going to have some frustrated athletes then. It's just the way it is. But my job, I'm not, egotistical enough to where I'm going to go, this is how I do it. And if you can't figure it out, then you're not going to work here. Well, how about if I just change how I say it, and maybe that guy gets it, and next thing you know, I have an amazing player on my hands.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think baseball, it can't be a one size fits all. There's so many ways to hit, to field a ground ball, to throw a pitch. Everyone has different bodies, heights, sizes, all that stuff goes on. And if we're trying to do everything the same, that's probably not going to work out.
Well, think about what's going on in Major League Baseball right now. You have like Harvard, Princeton, Dartmouth, Yale, like MIT, all these statisticians pulling all this information down of players, like spreadsheets on spray charts and where players should play and stuff like that. So you have all this information. Then you have old school baseball guys who are like, what are you talking about? You've never put a pair of cleats on in your life. You have no idea how hard that is.
Right.
Like, I understand that, but these are the trends and percentages are this. They're like, that's ridiculous. Well, what they're trying to do now is they're trying to find people who can communicate in the middle.
Right.
You know what I mean? Hey, I know what that information is saying. I need to take it, decipher it, and give it to him in baseball language so he doesn't think that, he has, no idea what he's talking about. So that's where a lot of us are coming into play now, is we're like the middlemen that are college guys going into pro baseball, because we're using technology and we're deciphering it for players. And that's where it's becoming most valuable, is that being able to humble yourself a little bit to know, I don't know that, but I can learn it. But at the same time, asking the question, hey, what does this mean? And that's where I think that technology and the ability to communicate it is such a valuable tool.
Absolutely. Yeah, this would have been my 8th year scouting, and there's been so many changes just in my 8 years. New things that we have to incorporate. A bigger picture of that puzzle we're scouting players. We have to add more information. So it's interesting how it works. I know coaches are probably getting even more information in the minor leagues, because I know a few of my buddies have been hired because they know how to incorporate all those numbers, that they're seeing on an iPad, and incorporate that to the hitter, and the hitter starts to get it. So if you don't adapt, right, it's that adapt or die, right? So you better learn how to do it, or else you're not going to be in the game very long.
No, I had two Major League Baseball programs come into my office, like some high profile people in their organization, literally sit down and they go, okay, how are you getting guys to buy into this?
Yeah.
I kind of looked at them, I go, you guys are professional teams. How are you not doing it? And I just said, look, here, it's pretty simple. This is what we're doing. This is how we're incorporating it. This is how we're explaining it. This is the why that everybody has to coach, because that's the question. Well, why do I have to do that?
Right.
Coach why, tell them the why, and then make sure you're doing drills that satisfy that why. I tell our guys, like, when we're coaching, I'm coaching the 95% of the game. There's going to be 5% that we're going to kind of prepare you for, but it rarely ever happens. My job is to coach you for that 90 to 95% that's going to happen all the time.
Sure.
And we'll prepare you for the other 5%, those random one-offs that you kind of go, whoa, that was a bizarre play. Mm-hmm. But when big league clubs are coming into our offices and asking how we're explaining this to our guys and how we're utilizing technology and how we're explaining it, that just tells me that I think we're doing a lot of really neat things and we're doing it right. But we're also continuing to educate ourselves on the nuances of this game that, to be honest, if I can make you be just 10%, 15% better, then you know what? Then I've done my job.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, this has been, I would say, quite a treat. This has been awesome. We haven't spoken in a long time. It's funny how the years just go by, and I'm still in Vegas out here. You went west, and now you're in the middle.
I'm in the middle.
In the middle.
I'm not in the Middle East.
Not in the Middle East, but you're somewhere in the middle. But man, I've been following you, and I appreciate you coming on board with me today. Congrats on all the success you've had. You even have your kids at Baylor now too. Is that right?
Correct. My daughter just graduated from Baylor. She works for a company here that makes, believe it or not, custom cowboy hats and different kinds of hats for country western singers. So all these different. Nice. It's fascinating. It's called Standard Hat Works here in Waco. And then my son is a Baylor student. He'll be going into his sophomore year. Yeah. So he was on our team this past year.
And what position is he? He's
an outfielder.
An outfielder. Okay. He said, forget the infield. None of that nonsense.
Yeah, infield, like my dad coaches that. I can't stand that infield coach. So I want to go in the outfield. Yeah,
he didn't want to work with you directly. That's what it was. Right?
Smart kid. He's smart. Right? He's a political science philosophy double major. He is way above my pay grade in regards to intelligence.
Wow. Yeah. That's interesting. It's interesting how kids are more involved in political things, and so I don't really talk about politics at all on this show, but man, I guess it's cool that they pay attention. I didn't pay attention at all until I got into scouting. When I started to listen on the radio about what's happening, I'm like, I guess I better learn about this stuff.
Yeah, my son wants to be an attorney, and he just educates himself all the time. He's reading books, podcasts, and he listens to so many different views. He's not just like one way. And I mean, there's times where he sits at my table and I'll look at my wife going, I have no idea what he's talking about. But it's just amazing. He's done a pretty impressive job. And he's actually doing a research project right now with a couple professors about the effects of the coronavirus on student athletes.
Wow. I bet that's very interesting.
It's pretty neat. Yeah.
Okay. Well, very cool, man. Well, I know you probably got maybe another 2 or 3 Zoom calls lined up today and about 4 or 5 tomorrow. Right. So, hey, man, I appreciate your time. Best of luck to you, and we'll keep in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chad. Thanks for having me on.
All right, Steve. Take care of yourself. We'll see you. Bye. Hey, guys. I hope you enjoyed that episode with Steve. As you can see, Steve is an amazing dude, has a lot of knowledge about the game. I love the experiences that he shared. and we certainly wish him the best at Baylor. If you feel like you need continued help on the mental side of your game, make sure you visit mentaledge.training, where I have an online video vault for you. If you're the type that feels like you like to learn on your own in regards to watching videos on the internet, my mentaledge.training program is great for you. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.